An island rail line was part of the deal to bring British Columbia into Confederation, but it never quite made it to Campbell River, and then somehow the line we did have got lost, and now it appears it might be on the comeback trail. I'm Dan McLennan. Welcome to FaceTime. My guest is Mary Ashley, who is co-chair of the Island Corridor Foundation. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Please explain the Island Corridor Foundation. Sounds very important.
Well, it's important to me and hopefully to a few other people. When the CPR, who inherited the line eventually, decided to sell part of it to Rail America, everything changed in that Rail America owned a section of it, CPR owned the rest, and the whole thing fell apart. In 2001, about Rail America decided that they didn't like being here, and they left. And they said they were going to shut down the rail line, and that wasn't the first time, but it was the most recent time. And a group of us who were part of Vancouver Island municipalities got pressured by people in Vancouver Island to save the railway. So we embarked on a little journey to try and figure out how we could put something together to work on this whole project. And that was 12 or 13 years ago, 14 years ago when we actually started looking at it. So it's been a little while, but we came up with a group called the Foundation. It's a private charitable foundation, federally chartered, and we decided this was the best approach we could take to pulling island people together through their leaders with directors from the 5 regional districts and 5 of the First Nations along the right-of-way. So we've got, I think, 14 municipalities and 13 First Nations bands along the right-of-way. So we ended up with 6 representatives on each side, including 5 directors, 5 chiefs or councillors from bands. And that was the formation of the Island Corridor Foundation. So the reason we wanted charitable status is because we were negotiating with Canadian Pacific Railway to take the railway lands on Vancouver Island and bring them permanently to Vancouver Island for the people of Vancouver Island, basically hold them in trust for the people of Vancouver Island.
Because there was some danger that that was going to be lost?
Yes, because if Rail America did leave, CPR was still running the passenger service, but the danger was that CPR was also going to pull out, which is what they wanted to do, and the rail lands would have turned into part of CPR's land holdings, and they have a lot of land holdings. They're in the real estate business as well as the rail business. So they would have broken up the corridor, probably sold the steel for a ridiculous price, we know what that's about, and started to develop the corridor itself. So the hue and cry prompted those of us that were involved with our municipalities to get busy and try and do something about it.
So this was originally the ENN, the Esquimalt, and the Nanaimo
That's right.
Railway, although it did go farther than that. It was part of the deal. In order for BC to join Confederation, there had to be a rail link to the island?
Yes, there did. This was part of the Trans-Canada Railway system, or was to be part. And it was Sir John A. Macdonald that made the promise that if we joined Confederation as a province, that we would get the railway, the Trans-Canada Railway, and onto the island. Sir John, though, was defeated in the next election, and the whole thing went sideways for a little while. It was interesting history because at one point, BC petitioned the Queen to get out of the deal because they weren't getting the railway. But then Sir John A. got re-elected, and the thing proceeded. And the last spike, they talk about being driven in New Westminster, but it actually is on Vancouver Island.
The last
spike. And Sir John A. drove that one too.
Where did he drive that one?
It's there's a cairn that marks it, which you hardly see unless you're looking for it along the rail corridor, because you go by it fairly quickly. But it's just north, I'm trying to just think the exact, I don't know the exact location. If one of the conductors were here, he'd tell me it's miles so-and-so. Because we still have miles signs along the railway. But it's north of Cobble Hill, let's say, on the rail line. I do have a map, if you want to.
Let's have a look at the map.
I can show that, of the actual rail line.
Taking us from Victoria up to Courtenay.
Yeah,
and then with the side off to Port Alberni.
That's right. And those two were separated for a while because Rail America owned the Port Alberni section, CPR owned the north-south section, and when we took over the lands, we had negotiated with both of those entities to bring it all back into one line, and so it is today.
Rail America being a group that essentially works all over the continent with tourism-related rail lines.
Yeah, Rail America is, its home is Boca Raton, Florida. So it didn't really know much about Vancouver Island, the owners. I happened to be riding the train in 1998 on the day that the owners from Boca Raton came up and rode the rail along with the CPR guys, and they had just done the deal. And I happened to be on the train that very day. So I met them, and of course there were huge hopes for the future. This was going to be so wonderful, and everything was under control, and it didn't last very long.
Now, back, if we go way back to the day of building the line,
1883.
How come it never got to Campbell River? Why did it stop in Courtenay?
Well, Robert Dunsmuir was the person who built the line.
The great coal baron.
The coal baron, Robert Dunsmuir, was given quite a deal of money at that time and millions of acres of land in British Columbia, not all on Vancouver Island, some in the northern BC, but he was given all of this in order to build the railway. And he built it as far as Courtenay, and of course that's what a lot of his coal mines were, Cumberland. So it kind of halted there while everything got going and the coal was moving. Passenger service was great because the roads weren't that good, or they were hardly in existence at that time. And so everything just went along very, very well. And somehow somebody forgot to go any further. And I don't exactly know the circumstances of why he didn't continue, because he did have the right-of-way and the mineral rights.
All the way to Campbell River?
Past Campbell River, I believe as far as Menzies Bay. And then the rail was supposed at that point to cross probably around the Narrows. We're not exactly sure, but I think it was around the Narrows, and join up with the islands and cross over and finally come to Pemberton, through the islands back onto the mainland to Pemberton. So it would have been Victoria across north of Campbell River to Pemberton as part of the Trans-Canada Railway system.
What a shame that never happened.
It didn't happen. Well, nowadays we think that would have been great. We would have had a crossing, mind you, not near the highest population, but we would have, maybe it wouldn't be the highest population because that's where the train went, if it had happened. But as history goes, that's the way the railway went or didn't go, and we're now dealing with just this section. Although there is a way to move it from Courtenay with a little bit of work from Courtenay through to possibly to Campbell River in future. We might not be here to see it, but... Is
it realistic to expect that we could ever actually find a right-of-way through that?
I believe it is, because we have something called the ERT road, which was a rail bed.
Yep.
And we could, providing we can cross the Puntledge River north of Courtenay, on the northern side of Courtenay, and get over to the ERT, we could have a railway running to Campbell River. And when you think of the potential for freight moving back and forth, taking it off our roads, putting it on rail, I think there is a possibility sometime in the future that could happen. people of Campbell River would sure like it to happen. They're always asking me,
Indeed.
when are you going to bring the railway to Campbell River?
Now the big setback came last year when an assessment of the track, the right-of-way, established that there were safety concerns with trestles and ties and whatnot, and passenger traffic was halted. Some freight continues to move on the rail line. Then came the big effort to find money to fix it up, estimated at $15 million. Half of that has been committed by the province. I think it was back in June of last year.
Yes.
And only in the last month or two, the feds have come on board with the other half. So there's this $15 million there, and the hope is that the track can be fixed up and we can go back to moving people on the rail line again, with some changes.
That's right.
So where do we stand on that?
The $15 million is to be spent on ties and ballast to bring the railway up to shape to renew the passenger service, and it gives us 10 years to work on the rest of it, because it is going to take more than $15 million to do the complete job. But we're talking the $15 million from Courtenay to Victoria. You notice I like to start at our end.
Of course.
Yeah, that is to renew it so the passenger service will be better than it has been before in terms of time, and it will start from Nanaimo early in the morning and make a run to Victoria, because there's a lot of people along that line who would gladly take the rail over the Malahat instead of their cars in the morning. So it'll run Nanaimo to Victoria, then from Victoria it'll do its usual run to Courtenay, and then from Courtenay back to Victoria, and then late afternoon, evening, Victoria to Nanaimo. And Nanaimo is going to be the hub of the railway. That's where it'll be, the trains will be serviced. That will be our headquarters.
So if, from the northern perspective then, if I want to take the train to Victoria from Courtenay, I'll have one opportunity during the day, and that would be roughly when?
Usually, we haven't got an exact schedule, but between 12 and 1. So you don't get into Victoria until late afternoon, evening, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So the biggest problem with from the Courtenay standpoint is that you pretty well have to stay overnight in order to take advantage of the railway. And that's fine if you're going down and you want to stay overnight. I usually had been doing that because I'd always have more than one meeting when I was down there. But for Nanaimo people, it'll be a day thing. Right. And then as soon as that is established and the ridership warrants it, we'll start looking at early mornings from Courtenay to hook up with the Nanaimo train. This will mean more trains, more rolling stock, but that's what's in our future. And how soon it happens depends on what kind of response we get to the first, I guess you could call it a bit of a commuter service almost.
Right. You have to get it moving and operating again to see what people think of it.
And Via Rail has always owned the rolling stock that we've used, and they still subsidize the railway. And when our Member of Parliament, John Duncan, our minister, announced that the funding was forthcoming from the federal government, he also announced that Via Rail would be supplying three refurbished Bud cars, because Bud cars are the ones we use. They're the self-propelled cars. There'll be 3 coming to the island that have been completely refurbished. They will have snack bars, which we've never had before. They will have bicycle racks, which is, to me, is a very Vancouver Island thing, because we've got our trails starting up and down. Eventually they'll all join. So it will become a real recreation trail rail at the same time. And those trails are being built by every single one of the regional districts along the right-of-way.
Well, that sounds
promising. We've opened so many of them this last year. It's marvelous to see.
And once again, we sent our intrepid FaceTime Streeter team out into the community, and we asked people, essentially, what do you think about train travel up and down Vancouver Island? Let's hear what they had to say.
I love it. Because it was always on my bucket list of one of the things I need to do, and when it was canceled I went, darn, I'm losing all the things on my bucket list before I get a chance to do them, and now I'm going to put it back on my bucket list, so there you go.
I think it's a good idea because I've been on it twice between Courtenay, Victoria and Courtenay, but I think it should be extended to Campbell River.
It smells a lot nicer than the bus does. I think the clientele are usually a little bit nicer, and you get a very scenic kind of private view of the island, I think.
It would be a time saver, for sure. And it's just cooler than a bus.
I said used to go down in the evening, in the morning and back. Whatever it did, I'd like it reversed. Yeah, we used to go down. When was it in the morning and come back and come back in the evening?
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought it was too bad we couldn't go down and stay overnight or something have it for another day.
Yes.
Because people like to go to Victoria, and either that or the bus. It's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or drive. Yeah, so I'd like it.
We had relatives out from Winnipeg and took them on it. They really liked it. And we did it in the winter so you could see a lot more because the trees were all bare. So that would be cool. We could see. I love trains. I come from Powell River, and my grandpa and my uncle and my father all worked on a steam locomotive many years ago. So, and him too, have always had love for trains. So anything like that is just right up our alley. Like the Rocky Mountaineer and all those type of trains. Wonderful, wonderful. I hope they get it back on.
Okay.
Yay!
Bucket list.
Love it.
Bucket list. Trains smell better. Trains are cooler than buses. You've got to be pleased with what you had to hear and see there.
Mm-hmm.
Support for the ENN rail, I take it as how you'd interpret that.
I do interpret it that way, and I have to tell you about a lady that came up to me, very elderly lady with a walker, walking with difficulty during the announcement of the federal funding, which took place in Langford. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, I can't tell you, I am almost in tears. I've been riding the railway for 90 years, and I'm not very well now, but I had to come out for this announcement because I'm so excited about I'm going to be able to ride the train again." I guess she's planning to live to at least 100, but I guess she started riding it when she was probably too small to walk, and she came out with the help of her daughter just because she was so excited.
Well, hopefully she
And that's how I felt, only I'm not 90.
You were also good enough to send us along a bunch of photos
Yes.
of the rail system. We should run those while we continue our conversation here.
Sure.
There's the train itself.
That's the locomotive. That's the freight locomotive.
Now, we're still running freight
Yes.
to, is it Port Alberni to Nanaimo, or?
No, there's nothing on the Port Alberni track because when Rail America left, they left because they lost the contract for all the freight which came from Port Alberni over to the Nanaimo side, which was too bad. But I think they weren't providing the service, and they got a little bit greedy perhaps and tried to raise the rates. And the other problem they had is they were using the barge facility, which is
There's the barge facility there.
Yeah, which is owned by the Washington Group through one of their companies,
Mm-hmm.
one of their, and what has turned out so well for us is that our operator, Southern Rail, is under one of the Washington Group companies as well. So it's all tied together now. But Rail America had to use somebody else's track. What Southern Rail has done since they had taken over this operation is build a facility at Anasis Island, so they don't have to use CPR track or Burlington Northern track. They have direct access to all of North America for freight, and that's one of the reasons they feel that this island is really worthwhile. Of course, if Mr. Washington likes you, and he feels that there's a challenge here to be met, we're very lucky. It doesn't hurt a bit, And they've stayed with us even through the shutdown of the passenger service.
So where's the freight running now?
The freight mostly runs between Courtenay and the barge facility, to get to the barge facility. So we don't have freight running right into Victoria at the moment, but there is a need for it because South Island, this is just one example, South Island has run out of aggregate. We have lots of aggregate on North Island. So we need a way to transport it, and that's one of the things that is being transported now by rail. And there are others as well. There's sort of the freight people that don't want to move to trucks to go on the highway are staying with us because they now can see that there's a future here.
Now the Island Corridor Foundation owns the right-of-way.
We own the rail lands.
And so
yes.
what you need is, aside from the go-ahead and the certification that that's all safe and ready and usable, you need an operator to come along and say, we'll run the rolling stock.
Yes, and we believe we have the best operator in Southern Rail.
And where's Southern Rail based?
Southern Rail, well, again, it's part of the Washington Group. It's based in Vancouver, out of BC. It's a Canadian company, as part of the Washington Group, and they are experts in short line railways operations, mainly freight, but they've also operated the passenger service.
So with the $15 million that has been committed by Victoria and Ottawa to improve the line, how soon, under a best case scenario, keeping in mind that there is more money needed down the road, down the line, how soon can you have that service back up and running?
Well, there are two things that have to happen. When the province gave us the $7.5 million, $500,000 was set aside with no strings attached, no matching funds required, for us to do a bridge and trestle assessment. It hadn't been done for years and years, and we knew before we could proceed, we would have to assess those structures, make sure they were sound, before we proceeded with the rest of the improvements. The bridge and trestle study was released in March, and we were very fortunate that most of the structures are sound, and a lot of them were built in the early 1900s. So it's really quite amazing that the way they were built. There are 2 or 3 that are going to need some repairs. So we're working with our members, our regional district members and others, to get the funding for that, to go ahead with those repairs. And that's, I think, just over $4 million. And it's about 3 structures. And I believe one of them has to be almost completely replaced. But of 40-something structures, we felt that was pretty worthwhile. And after we got the results of the study and we gave them to the federal government, that's when they said, yes, this is going to be a go, and they came up with their share of the $15 million. So we have $7 million from the province because we've already used the $500,000, and $7.5 million from the federal government. And we will begin work, first of all, on the structures that need to be upgraded. And then in the meantime, we're working on signing agreements. Of course, you have to have agreements with the federal government and the provincial government. And all of the money is to go towards infrastructure. None will be spent on anything but infrastructure. And then the third agreement that we're pretty well completed and that we're ready to sign, now that we know there's a future, is with Southern Rail for a long-term operating agreement. So we'll have a very good operator, and it won't be just freight and passenger service. There'll be other forms of transportation in the tourist sector and so forth that will come along.
So how soon could you?
Dates.
Ballpark.
Ballpark, I would like to think we can have the passenger service up and running by next spring.
That soon?
Yes, I think we can do it by next spring. We know what work has to be done on the track. We know where the priorities are. So that's all been taken care of and planned out We've had that in the works for quite a while.
So that trestle work and the tie replacement and rail bed improvements can all be done in time for the spring?
Yes, in time for the spring. And it'll be one of the best days of my life, the day I ride that train, that first passenger train when it leaves the station early in Nanaimo.
Now, there is a group called the ENN Railway Action Group, which is not overly enamored with the plan as it has been put forward. Their spokesperson has been saying that there is no clear plan that has been put forward, and that when we look at total money involved, it's probably closer to 100 million or more, and that this 15 million is unrealistic, and that if that's all we have, we should be spending all of that down in the western communities to make a nice little commuter system down there, and then work our way north as we get more money. Your thoughts as to the ENN Railway Action Group?
Well, I certainly, I don't disagree with what they have to say in terms of the support that's needed to make all this happen, and they say they're supportive, that they're trying to help us. I'm not quite sure how, but I would say that the reason we didn't go to try and pull together the whole amount that we need to start with is that it was, at the time, it was approximately 103 million altogether, and that would include Port Alberni and everything. There was a study done by the province that we participated in as Island Corridor Foundation that said that this is a huge task, and it needs to be done a piece at a time. Don't try and raise the whole 103 million. We know we need that much eventually, but take it a piece at a time. And that is why we came back with a plan for the 15 million, because we know that gives us 10 years to get the service back and running, to expand the service, to expand the freight, and eventually to do all the work that's necessary on the whole line. There's quite a lot that needs to be done on the Parksville-Port Alberni section. So we know on the north-south run, we can, with the 15 million, we can have a running and safe railway. I mean, it's safe now because we still have freight running on it. But that is the reason we didn't go for the whole 103 million or try. We did at the beginning think we should try that, but it wasn't the way to go. And the study suggested we do it this way, and we've been successful. So that would be my answer. Yes, we need more money. We will eventually. Yes, we've got 10 years ahead of us. And yes, we have a plan. We have a very detailed plan. So, our members are privy to it. Everything is on our website. It's we've been putting more and more on our website, so there should be no surprises to anybody about what we're doing, or how we're doing it, or how we're spending the money.
And you will be able to come back here and update us as time goes on, as developments move forward, particularly when the big day comes next spring.
Next spring. And in the meantime, we have the new rail station opening in Nanaimo, the one that there was arson and a big fire. That's restored and ready to go. The tenant is an Irish pub, which I think I'll really enjoy. You might too. And so that'll be opened this late spring, this summer. So we'll have a brand new train station there with a real attraction, which Old Town Nanaimo is very excited about.
Sounds good.
And it's just progress, progress, progress.
Progress. And
Yes.
progress requires time, which we are just about out of. I'd like to thank you for coming in and sharing this vision of the ENN with us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
My guest has been Mary Ashley, co-chair of the Island Corridor Foundation. Of course, we'd like to hear what you think of the show, or who you'd like to see on the show. And here's how to do that. You can like us and comment on Facebook. That's www.facebook.com /FaceTime4U, for the number 4. Or you can email us at face-time@shaw.ca. And so ends FaceTime number 9. I'm Dan McLennan. Thanks for joining us.